how to draw a car from different perspectives, or a guy on a different perspective, right there in the spot. Rather than training how to draw, I was just forced to draw in different panels in order to actually be able to tell a story.
So you've been doing that for years.
Yeah. I mean, the stories before, they were even worse than these ones, right? Success. But yeah, that was like all my life, basically.
So as a teenager, basically you were already familiar with kind of storytelling, visual storytelling, and this earned you kind of attention from the industry, or how did it happen? Have you perception from amateurism to the industry?
Well, I was, as I say, because I was drawing at all the ways, like I was kind of like sleepy at class in the school because I was drawing until maybe 4 or 5 a.m. And my parents, they were cool with that. I suppose they were seeing like the light under the door, and they were like, we wonder what this kid is doing. And then I was falling asleep at class because obviously you wake up at 7. So for a long time in my life, I slept like maybe 3 hours a day since I'm a kid, which is very strange. So I have a sleep deprivation, I suppose. And then when I was 17, I went to show my portfolio to some studio, local studio, and they gave me an opportunity that I wouldn't give that opportunity right now to anybody, like that young.
So until that you were self-taught, or?
Yeah, very much, yes. Yeah, I never went to school or art school. Like at the time in Spain we didn't have animation schools, or yeah, actually I went to animation school for a year. I couldn't finish because I needed to work in order to pay, which was really good because it helped me to know the basics of animation. But it was one of the very few animation schools at the time. Now new generations, they have very specialized and animation schools that are more targeted to specific fields. At the time it was a little bit more general. It was also 2D. 3D was like not even a thing. And that's how I started. I kind of like at the age of 17, 18, I started working almost under the table in this studio. This guy, Antonio Zurera, incredible artist. He saw my portfolio. It was full of like, guns and tits and like nothing too different from what I have here though. But he's like, okay, let's give an opportunity to this teenager, and that's it.
So what were your first tasks like? I mean, because it's always kind of mysterious. I was working for this studio, but
yeah,
what?
It was basically correcting storyboards. They were not giving me just the chance to be an artist because I didn't have really the skills that you need to actually be professional. So I remember correcting a lot of hands. Like they are like, the client don't like the position of the hands like that. So I was just correcting somebody else's drawings. They were amazing professionals in this studio, by the way. Everybody was much older than me, and I was learning a lot. But the first thing was just basically correcting hands, and I was like super happy. And then soon after I started doing storyboards, and then later on, because at schools is a detail that I forgot to tell, I was doing a lot of flip books in the books, and then I learned somehow how to animate in the hard way, right? Like just like flipping, and I was trying to figure things, like from a very early age I was trying to figure how to do animation. Like I was not, like I wanted to do it at home with lights or with like lanterns. Like I was getting frustrated pretty soon. I'm like I was not able to see results. And then, what's up? And the best result that I was able to find, it was in a flip book. That was pretty cool. And then when I went to this studio, I have skills in the motions and in the technique of animation. So I started doing like animation test. like very sophisticated guy running, falling again from a cliff, and then getting a parachute, and the camera was going all around. And my boss at the time was like, how did you do that? And now I see it and I'm like, it's true, like how? Like why did I have those skills? Like I still don't know. So they gave me animation, and I started doing some animation for different projects, and then that's how I start basically animating, drawing animation. And then very early on, I went to London and I showed my guy jumping down a cliff, also like another camera going around a horse, like everything like very extra sophisticated, almost like showing off. Like look at how cool I can draw, you know. And then DreamWorks hired me, and I was very, very young, and I was very cocky because I was like, holy shit, I'm just like under 20 or 21 or something, and I'm already working in this. It was called Sinbad, and it was a 2D film, and it was the last 2D film that DreamWorks did. Disney announced that they didn't want to do any more 2D, and they were like, we are closing all the 2D studios, we're just going to do this. They did a horrible dinosaur or something, and in DreamWorks we were like, that's never going to happen. 2D is never going to die. And a few months later, they are like, this is the last DreamWorks movie. And there I was, right? Like, cocky, like, I have, all the future in front of me. And I didn't know how to use a computer. I didn't even know how to open a file. And then I end up, like, working back again into restaurants, kitchens, and things like that.
So that was the early 2000s.
At the early 2000s, yeah.
And so this kind of 2D to 3D kind of switch was a major thing for the industry.
It was dramatic. It was dramatic. You need to understand that this happened when I was lucky enough to be on my 20s. And I bought my first computer, and I learned how to draw in Photoshop, and then later I became an art director. So I kind of like stopped my career as an animator only to an art director. But a lot of people at Disney or DreamWorks, they were on their, maybe imagine people in their late 40s, early 50s, that they were like big stars with incredible drawing skills. And then all of a sudden you give them a computer, and then you ask them to move the character in a computer. So most of them, they were not able to adapt. I think it was like even suicidal sort of like news, like people that they were not able to convert, and that they were like super high up there in terms of big stars basically at Disney or DreamWorks, and then all of a sudden they were like, we don't have a job for you, and they were not able to adapt. So it was a huge change in the animation industry. Yeah.
Comparable to silent to sound film.
Yeah, and maybe comparable to what is happening right now with artificial intelligence, which I don't even know if we're not talk about that, but I don't know what's going to happen there, right?
So, but you also work while you were in England. You also worked for pretty cool projects. I mean,
yeah.
You're working on Gorillas videos, a video game.
Yeah.
Can you?
That was after, so it was like maybe like few years in which I have to figure out what to do. I was okay. I cannot be an animator anymore. I'm not interested. Like I want to be an artist. I want to paint and then my personality at the time was a little bit of a cocky artist, and the animation art itself, moving characters. It's an art itself, which is insane, and I am very obsessed with body mechanics and how things move. But at the time, I'm like, I want to paint, I want to draw, I don't want to be in front of a computer all the time. I am in front of a computer all the time, anyways, and I kind of like don't do oils anymore. I mean, not that much. I still do sometimes, but maybe for, just for a wedding of a friend of mine, I do a painting. But I started working in very cool projects in London. That was the difference from my time I was in Spain, all of a sudden I started doing like really cool commercials, gorillas stuff. I was working in this studio called Passion Pictures, and they had like really amazing, high level, very cool art direction stuff. But it was commercial, at the end it was just like something for Motorola or stuff like that, right? And then right there I became an art director, and then kind of like I started making my progress, always going up and down in my career. Like sometimes I'm broke and I need to figure what to do, and sometimes I'm like again up. Like this industry is very unreliable, I would say.
You mentioned your interest in body mechanics and this kind of. When did that appear? Because it's something that is very specific, I guess, to what you're doing. So, how kind of did you get fascinated by that, and how do you develop these kind of? Because sometimes your films are so perfect in this kind of body mechanics that it kind of get mistaken by rotoscoped kind of films when it's actually pure animation. So how did you kind of develop this particular skill?
Well, I mean, I'm obsessed with animation, and I've been always very much obsessed with the animation from Disney, the Nine Old Men. There were this group of animators that they were actually studying animation, studying movement, and studying the physics of movement, and they were recording real actors, and then all of a sudden you were having them, being a bear or being like a fox, Robin Hood, the Jungle Book, and the animation and the movements, they were extremely realistic, yet the proportion of the characters, they were like completely not realistic. And I always love the physics of movement. It's something that I always pay special attention, how people move. There's a lot of actors in Hollywood that they are really good facially, but maybe when they move, they're not that good. Just the way that you just grab a glass, or you just go from that corner and then come back. Some actors, they don't know how to move properly, even though emotionally they are amazing in camera. But the body is like something really difficult to control when somebody's recording you. So many times I record myself, because if I lock the door and I am by myself, I can act. If I am in front of people, it's impossible. Like I get like really embarrassed. So many times I record myself, especially movements, because I know what I want in terms of body mechanics, and because I move well, like I repeat this shot as many times as possible. But the team of animation that I usually work with, they are incredible. It's a company called Agora, and we started working together in The Witness, and even though they didn't have the company at the time, there were like few of the animators. Jacob, one of the founders, incredible animator, and they all come from DreamWorks. DreamWorks actually is a studio that took animation in a sort of like realistic, very human, very realistic, and very much based on the physics of movement. And since then we've been together, and then their company grow, and I don't feel comfortable working with anybody else. Every time I have a project, they know how I work. I record my actors, or in the case of Jibaro, we record dancers, and we record with 2, 3, 4 cameras, sometimes just focus on the body, but many times also a close-up on the face, and we give all that information to the animator, and then the animator does the same thing as they were doing back in the time on Disney, right? Like studying how the body moves, where the body initiates, and basically the law of physics again.
So you're in England. You're kind of hired as an art director, but you start kind of having the desire of directing yourself.
Yeah.
How did come? I mean, how did it come to you? Kind of, when I said,
Yeah.
I want to do my own thing.
Well, it came out because, first of all, I had it since I was a kid. I wanted to tell my stories, I suppose. But at that time came because many times I was dissatisfied when I saw the final result of my art. It was traveling from hand to hand, and then at the end it's just like, they put a face right in that part of the painting, or it's like, and then I was, I wanted to take control of my art, basically. I wanted to make sure that what I do travels very well in the pipeline and it shows exactly as I want it. Because animation is basically a factory, it's a pipeline. And once you do something, it goes to another department and then goes to another department. And sometimes people is like, okay, here it goes, I give you my thing. And then you forget about it, or you actually make sure that your stuff travel well in the pipeline, and that's when an artist is responsible, when you just don't give things and then abandon them. It's very difficult to find artists that they are actually responsible to their art and they follow their art for the whole process, especially in big pipelines, like you can have them in Sony, Disney, Pixar. But I think that, it's a word of advice. I think that you should not abandon your art or whatever you do, and you should follow it, how it goes, because sometimes you will see it and it's like, wait a minute, I was not intending to do that. But because the pipelines are so big, it's almost difficult to follow them. But that was the reason I wanted to direct. And I started, because I didn't have the opportunity, nobody was coming to me and saying like, hey, I want you to direct this. Nobody comes to you ever if you actually never did anything, just to do some directions. You actually need to prove it. And in order to prove it, I started doing a bunch of short films that they were like fake commercials. We didn't play all of them here because I was like, maybe they don't hold that well, that big. One of them was Gentrification that I did with Jordan, and some others about, another one was called Philips, about some trimming, sort of like thingy. I don't know, the most crazy ideas. And then it creates some sort of like shock in the industry. People were like, oh wow, this is very cool. And then it's when I start jumping into directing commercials. But it didn't come after a little bit later. I mean, things are a little bit confused chronologically now that I'm thinking.
But basically this is what led you to Spider-Verse.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and what can you share it? What did you, how was to deal with that industry?
Yeah. I was dealing with that industry for a while because I was working, actually we are skipping an important step. I was working as an art director for Disney in this TV show Tron, exactly. And that was my first step into a big corporation. And that was really amazing. I always wanted to work for Disney. I love Disney, even though people kind of like always think that I am against it. I'm like, no, I'm super pro Disney. Like Disney are the best at doing Disney. The problem is that there's a lot of copies out there that they are not that good, that they try to use the same ingredients, but they are not as efficient and as good as doing that product. So I was there and it was beautiful for like almost 2 years, more maybe even 3 years, doing this TV show. And then that's also between these projects and Spider-Verse, I was doing some sort of like fake commercials because I wanted to direct. And then I started being represented by Frame Store as a director. But I told you, like, nobody wanted to do anything with my style at the time because, Spider-Verse, it didn't exist, the Witness didn't exist, nobody have seen Jibaro, now it's different. Like a lot of commercials now, it's just like, for Coca-Cola or like big brands, they approach you, agencies, they approach me because they already seen that this is achievable. Exactly, the results. But back in the time, I'm like, guys, I can do the coolest commercial ever, but they were like, doesn't pick up. So I had to jump into Spider-Verse.
Can you tell us a bit how was the Spider-Verse adventure? Because
the Spider-Verse adventure, I did it even though I wanted to direct. At the time, they were like, "We want you to be the art director." I'm like, "Yeah, but guys, I don't want to art direct projects that I don't direct." But they were like, "Really, like, we want you to do it." And I was broke at the time. I needed money. So I said, like, "Fuck, okay, I'm gonna do it." And I was just by myself in the beginning. I started basically alone. Nobody was hired. We didn't even have a director at the time. And Sony was really supportive. Like, they were listening to any crazy stuff that I was requesting. Like I was telling you before, like, I'm like, "I want to go to New York. I want you guys to hire a company, the ones that clean windows, and I want to get in one of those weird, like extremely dangerous platforms to clean windows, because I don't want to see New York from the top. I don't want to see New York from the bottom. I want to be in the building and see what it is to have vertigo, right? For real." So they were like, yes, saying yes to everything, and they were like, trying and looking, and they flew me to New York. Unfortunately, I couldn't do the window thing because of a lot of like sort of like paperwork that needed to be done. Thank God, by the way. But they took me the craziest buildings, like extremely tall buildings that in the bottom there is just like a chain, nothing else, not even a security glass, nothing, like a chain. And I was just, oh fuck. And I didn't thought ever about the sticking, you know, the theories. I didn't thought about that. I was just like, fucking stupid. But it was amazing, and Sony was super supportive, and they loved what I was doing, and they still are. They really love. It was like 2 years. I was training a team. I was bringing a lot of my artists as well, and we create an animation test that it was like mind blowing. And Sony still don't allow me to show that. Not even like I asked them several times. It's like, why? I don't know. You guys write to them, ask them. I have no clue. They don't want it. They don't want the world to see it yet for some reason. But I'm sure at some point we could see it when it's all enough that it's not even that impactful. But it was a really cool experience. But then we have the disagreement. I'm gonna ask myself the question that you wanted to ask me, right? What happened?
Go ahead.
We had a disagreement that it makes total sense. Like my way, I wanted to do a Spider-Verse, same as I did The Witness, heavily based on painting, heavily based on artists that they are like doing a little bit more like analog work. And Sony is a huge company that has huge agreements with softwares. At the time, it was like this software called Katana, which it was like, I don't need this. But obviously, they have an agreement, and you know, it's like probably whoever is in charge of these companies, they were like, what is this guy saying? And in a way, I was basically saying, Sony, I want 100 of your people go, and I want to bring another 100 different people, and I want to change your entire pipeline because I want to do the film my way. So this animation test that we did, that they were like basically 5 scenes, they were done with the technique that I wanted to develop, which was the technique that I developed to do The Witness. And at some point they are like, we cannot do it like that, it will cost money, it will be suicidal, and it could have been suicidal. And then I was saying like, okay, if you guys don't want to do it this way, I don't see a point for me to stay here. And then we have like a few back and forth time, and then I end up leaving. But they, you know, the art director that came after and the team that stayed there, they have a huge task on them, right? Which was like basically taking, we were saying before, like the ship to the port back, right? It's just like, wow, now what we do? And they did an amazing job. I mean, they were all very fan of the work, and they were all really enjoying the art direction that we set up together, because it was a huge team. And I'm very glad that they were very purist, and they went, I mean, they did the best that they could, and they went further, right? Like my direction was to go that way, their direction was to go that way, but I think that they did a really, really good film, and it was a landmark in animation as well. I think that film, it created like a huge impact in animation, because a lot of people that they were not nerds like me or like many of the people that are in this room, they went to see that film and they appreciate it as well. So it was like, wow, people were like really, really starting to appreciate animation as a technique in cinema.
You were mentioning location scouting and your need kind of to be there, be in the spaces that you work with animation. Was it the case for only for Spider-Verse, or is something that you've kind of you feel the need? You went through this process for your other films. I mean, how, because realism, or kind of having this feeling of a real thing, real spaces, real proportion, is something that kind of it's a key word for all your work. And I wonder, how do you deal with that?
I love to be on location, and it's a mandatory thing to do. Like in the case of The Witness, I needed to go to Hong Kong at the time. In the case of Jibaro, I went to all the north of America, and like the west side, Oregon, Washington, north of California, with a camera, and I got into kind of like dangerous situations without knowing it in a way, to get into these locations. I went to bare land that it was that I didn't know. I saw people walking around with a spray, and I'm like, I wonder what is this? And sometimes I was spending like maybe 9 hours without seeing anybody, just getting lost and walking in a massive national park in America, which you can find all sort of predators, you know. Like in Europe, we have wolves, but over there is like serious shit in nature. America is wild. But there I was with my camera, and now I start thinking about it. I'm like, fuck, I'm a little bit apprehensive about what could have happened, or maybe you fall, or maybe you, right? They're in the middle of nothing. Very guerrilla style. I kind of like guerrilla style, even though I would love to stop doing guerrilla style in the future, like going with a team. But sometimes when you go with a team, it's much slower. And I just like to get with my bag, get lost in Hong Kong, you know, opening. One person is usually kind of like more discreet, even though in Hong Kong I was kind of standing out a little bit, but you know, it's faster than going with a team. It's just open doors, go to places, don't ask any question, don't ask permissions, because if you start asking permissions, people is not gonna let you get in, right?
So you collect material, photos, videos, etc.
Yeah.
And how do you process that?
Then I went, for example, I can give you an example in The Witness. I went to Hong Kong, and then I start seeing a location that can be interesting for a specific scene. And then, even though I did a storyboard before, more or less of what I wanted the cameras, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wow, I totally see this happening, and the girl is like going from this point to that point, and then the guy's gonna wait in that corner. So then I start making, you know, my shots. It's basically location scout as a live action, and then I take either short videos in 4K or maybe like quality photographs, and then we paint them. And then over the paintings, we put the characters. But I basically go on location to basically get the information of light, so things look real. And when we paint the background, it's very much what Disney was doing back in the time with Bambi, right? It's like it's a background and then a deer in the middle. But now the deer is a 3D character, so it's the same process.
Yeah, I mean, this I would like to stay on this word of realism, because there is this kind of very magical balance that you find between kind of some hyper-realistic elements and a very deep and personal universe that it's everything but realistic. It's your universe, it's your colors, it's your kind of cut of lights. So how did you get there? I mean, when you had the intuition that this was the direction that you wanted to explore?
Right. Well, I don't know. It's just it's basically intuition. Like I didn't study. I didn't went to school, as I say, but I didn't study composition either. But there are some things that they look ugly, and there are some things that they look great, and I don't know what it is. Like I don't know the norms of triangular compositions, or I know when an image is unbalanced, and I know when an image breathes well. And basically, my rule is very simple. Like I go for things that, even though the camera moves a lot, I go for things that you can actually register within a second. Like if you look into an image and then you close your eyes and within 1 second you say, yeah, I saw a girl running with a red robe, or I saw a guy on top of a cliff, or whatever. That's a successful image. You go to the cinema now and you see these huge blockbuster movies with 5 superheroes and energies and explosions, and one has like a building on his hands, and that's impossible to register. Like you get overwhelmed. It's almost like Barockian, but it's like for me that's unsuccessful. I think that an image needs to be minimalistic because the brain needs information that is easy to process. Because otherwise we get overwhelmed and then we don't follow the story.
Another thing you mentioned, it's another keyword in animation in general, is pipeline, and the choice of your collaborators, and the fact that kind of the bigger a project becomes, kind of you need more and more collaborators, and how, I mean, there is a part, of course, that need to be kind of delegated to the collaborator. At the same time, you need bright, creative people that will put something of their knowledge, sensibility, and art into what is finally your vision. How do you manage kind of to find this balance in finding collaborators that kind of, on one side they respect your vision, on the other side kind of they put something of them and their skills?
Well, that's a good question. I'm still doing that. There is like some guys that I work with for years that they continue, and I like to work with them, and if there is a new project I go after them. Like, remember that movie they did twice, Jack Lemmon, and that is something about moon. It's like the two in the newspapers, and there is one guy who wants to get retired and he's gonna get married, and then Walter Matthau. You guys remember that movie?
Remember the title?
What? Honeymooners, exactly. They did a black and white version first, and then Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau did it after. And it's basically a guy doesn't want to keep working, and then the boss is like, okay, I get it. But then he's trying to manipulate to destroy his marriage in order to bring him back to the newspaper. I'm not that person, but sometimes when I want an artist or a person that is really key on my projects, like I really try to convince him or convince her as with, not manipulating obviously in this movie, but there's some people that you want, and there's some people that, they might get into these pipelines and this style of work, and it's like, never again, because this is crazy. These projects are killing. We are working Monday to Sunday sometimes, and there is always like a client, in this case Netflix or Ubisoft, that they want things finished, and there is a deadline, and deadline always makes you suffer a little bit. So finding people that they are like good artists, finding people that they are responsible with their art and they follow their art during all the different stages that we were saying before, and artists that they are able to work this hard and they are able to suffer and be passionate about the project, same as I am, is very difficult. But they are out there, and many of them, they keep working with me, and I'm very grateful for my team. It's just like something that I wouldn't be here without them.
What was that kind of brought you to Love, Death and Robots? How this kind of connection happened, and how is it going?
It's going very cool. How it happened, after Spider-Verse, basically 1 week after, a friend of mine, Italian by the way, Gabriele Penacchioli, and a very good artist from DreamWorks, he was in charge of curating the artist for Love, Death and Robots. And he gave me a call. Now you have to imagine, this is me after Spider-Verse, and I was pretty like low. And then all of a sudden this guy called me and he's like, hey, we want you to direct and to write a film where you can actually put everything that you want that you will never see in traditional animation, like nudity, violence, blood, borderline porn almost, like they wanted to shock. And it makes total sense. Like if you want to do animation for adults, at that time, you couldn't do PG-13 or something in the middle because that falls into the land of nobody. You needed to do something that it was like rebellious, it needed to be shocking, it needed to be aggressive, and that was what Love, Death and Robots was trying to do, and that's what we did. I mean, the first season for Love, Death and Robots, it was really shocking. It was disturbing for some people, and I think that was really great. It created a lot of opinion. What? People that were like offended, some others they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And both things are really positive. When you make a movie and people get pissed off, it's good. And when you make a movie and people is amazed, it's equally good. So that's what the first season of Love, Death and Robots did. I think it was like a big change in animation industry. And it came all thanks to Tim Miller, who is the biggest nerd in this room for sure. As I told you, he has like a comic book shelf that is, I don't know, as tall as this, and you need like staircases just to get a specific book. And he's been always trying to do an anthology based on the heavy metal brand. And he ended up meeting David Fincher, working on the titles for The Girl of the Dragon Tattoo. I think it was the first time that they worked together, or maybe before. They become friends, and then for years they try, until Netflix says, okay, let's do it. And it was the first time that animation had an opportunity. Let me correct this. The first time that mainstream animation was actually doing something out of the box of what is usually a little rat that saves the world and, the hero journey and things like that. Like, no, we are doing something completely out of the box.
How was the collaboration with the team and Fincher? I mean, how did it go?
Super cool. They, as I say, they just let me do. It was like the best experience. Working with the Love, Death and Robots people and Netflix is always very cool because they at least in my case, they just let me do whatever I wanted. Both stories are extremely weird. How can you pitch something like that to some executives, right? It's a guy that is deaf and a siren that is bringing people to the water. Like the pitch is already like, no, we don't want to do this. And they're like, cool, let's do it. And also there's no dialogue whatsoever. But they were like on board. And in the case of The Witness, I was telling you before, they gave me money. I didn't even have computers. And we were asking for a big budget. And we presented the budget and everything, and they green-lighted. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So, what am I going to do with this money now? So it was like, it's almost like, wow, it seems like they are, in a way, it's like, wow, guys, are you responsible, really? Like, are you giving me this money? Like, I needed to rent space, I needed to rent computers, buy computers, hire a team, and then we did it, from scratch.
But you had a script, and
yeah.
So you collaborated with them on the script. Did you have a test or animation, you had feedback, or you
Yeah.
were really left alone doing your thing and delivering the final product?
No. I mean, to be honest, a lot of freedom, but there is like a moment. I was actually exaggerating it and maybe making it a little bit nicer than it sounds. But to be honest, in the case of Tim Miller, he likes to lock the script before you start doing anything. And I show them my first version, which is very much what we saw in the screen, except for few dialogue tweaks here and there that we were kind of like back and forth between Tim and myself. And once everything is locked, then you start doing production. In the case of The Witness, as in the case of The Witness and any other project, I start doing my storyboards, my animatic, and then I show them a very clear version of what I want to make in terms of like cameras, lenses, even sound design very early. So they have a clear idea and they're like, okay, we like it, we don't want to bother you during the process. That's something that I really appreciate. I prefer to work harder in the animatic to show the client or whoever is paying what I want to do, so I can actually, because if you have to show every step, it becomes a little bit of a very slow process, and sometimes work in progress is very ugly. Like when people are like, let me see what you are doing, it's like, no, it's horrendous. Let me say, yeah, this is horrible, what are you doing? So you want to avoid that. You want to show when it's cool and when it's finished, and you need time. And if you do a good animatic and if you show your work in the right moments, then you make sure that the client is comfortable, that they can trust you, and it's good. It's good. Never show stuff too early because it's a bad idea.
And during the process of doing the Witness, you had already started working on Windshield Wiper? Or
Yeah.
am I wrong? I mean, how? Because it's a very special project in your career.
Yeah, Windshield Wiper. Yeah.
How was the process? Because there are kind of different approaches and techniques that are used. Can you have us a walk through kind of the material even of the Windshield Wiper?
Yeah, the Windshield Wiper is a project that I started as a proof that I wanted to direct. And when I finished, I already directed a number of things. It took like 7 years. It doesn't mean that it was 7 years working on it. It was like 7 years stopping. 7 years frustrating, like, this is not going anywhere. 7 years where I was learning from the other projects and also the other projects that were learning from the Windshield Wiper. Like Spider-Verse has a lot of things from the Windshield Wiper that like needs to say thank you for the Windshield Wiper, and also the Windshield Wipers have a lot of things from Spider-Verse that should be thankful for. So they were kind of like it was a project that it was a training camp, I would say, and it was a very old story, vignettes, basically of love, and it's a subject that I'm always very drawn by because love is. We are extremely vulnerable and fragile with love. Like you can actually imagine the worst asshole in the world, like a dictator or some horrible president or whatever, that if somebody breaks their heart, they feel extremely miserable. Doesn't matter how hard or how horrible of a person they are, and we are extremely fragile when it comes to love. And it's a topic that it's been, obviously, that's why it's been the main topic in music, it's been the main topic in art, and I wanted to do a little bit of a homage to it because it's been also the main topic in my life, I would say, or one of them. Yeah, very important topic.
And it got you an Oscar.
An Oscar? I don't know, can you believe it?
Can you tell us a bit kind of, the trajectory, because it's impressive for kind of rather independent kind of animation film, kind of developed in 7 years. With how did it go?
Well, we opened at the Directors for Night, which was it was like, I remember that they, especially because the film was projected with extremely experimental films. Like almost the other films, the narratives, they were like, wow, almost like films that they could be in a modern art museum. And that was very interesting for me because I'm like, oh wow, they are taking the windshield wiper as something rather experimental. And that made me feel very proud. I was thinking like, wow, this is cool. We are doing something interesting and different. And opening in Cannes, it was a beautiful thing, a dream come true. And that was the very, very beginning after 7 years of working in and off. And then we started the whole Oscar campaign. We presented in few festivals, but not too many. To be honest, we didn't do like a festival run at all. We were basically, my producer and me at the time, we were extremely busy working in other projects. Actually, I was working in Jibaro, so it was like no time to submit to festivals. That's a full-time job. But something that I wanted to do is to, since you've been working 7 years and nobody cares about short films and it's very difficult to sell them out there, I'm like, let's just put it for free online so people can watch it. And a lot of the times you when you do the Oscar campaign, people are very, like, I want to keep my film, I want to show it in case I can sell it later. But in the case of a short film, it doesn't make any sense. So I think that was a good move. The film got a huge sort of like free distribution because it was like I put it on my Instagram, I put it in YouTube, and then we got in the short list, and then all of a sudden I realized that I couldn't afford to be nominated because you are fighting against, this is a fight, but you are basically competing against, it was a Disney in this case, or I don't remember what were the other ones. There are companies that they put millions in a campaign only for their short film, just to rent a billboard that it might cost, I don't know, $15,000 just to put a billboard for a week or things like that. And I'm like, that's my budget. Just for billboards, So we needed to think how to make things differently, and then you have little time. And we were doing very cool campaigns with my friends that they have this company called Amigos Solution in Spain. And he's a friend of mine, by the way, that I know him since he was a baby, and he's a really cool mind, and we were kind of like trying to have some cool ideas. Also with Jordan, we were producing basically that billboard. We ended up purchasing a billboard for like a week. We also had the help from Spanish government. They give us as well some cash to spend there. So it was like, wow, we need to promote and spend money. And we ended up winning. And that was, I don't know, it's very strange. But I have to tell you that an Oscar, same as many awards, but the Oscar specifically, you are like, oh wow, you have an Oscar. But it's something that people don't think, that an Oscar is a very heavy award, emotionally, and it's just like people are looking at you and they're like, okay, now what is next? And then it comes all this imposter syndrome that most of us we have, that they're like, well, are you as good? What are you going to do? So they're like really heavy award that of course open doors, but you always have to keep the level, and you need to show to the industry and to the audience that you can actually keep it up there.
Well, the response was Jibaro.
Well, yes, but not, because I was working at the same time. But yeah, of course, right after the Oscar, basically chronologically, a few months later came Jibaro, which was like a really convenient thing. It was not planned, but it was like, wow, this is cool.
So let's jump to Jibaro and what it meant. I mean, in terms of scale of the work? What did it represent, and what did you learn from that experience of Jibaro?
Well, Jibaro was a very difficult technical. I mean, I was telling you before, animation is a very, it's a very bad idea. It's just like one drawing after another, and it's almost like crazy. It's like, why do it that? But somebody insisted, and then it picked up, and then it came Disney, and then the art became what it became. But it was really nightmares, and it's extremely difficult, and you need a lot of people. And projects of animation now, they change, they evolve, but they didn't get any easier. They get even more complicated, and animation now is more similar to physics than to fine art in a way. I mean, there is a lot of fine art there, but there's like a lot that is basically physics. Like we recreate a world that is based on the real physics of movement, gravity, light, you know, how we simulate water, clothes, how we simulate light, how we simulate materials. It's almost physics more than, I mean, it's a combination of both, but technically it's impossible. And Jibaro was everything that you don't want to do in animation. It's just like water, fluids mixed, cloth, nature, and then all mixed with paintings and art. But I like that, you know, like and also animation is an illusion. You actually don't need to do the whole thing. Like you can actually, there is a beautiful Disney book that is called The Illusion of Life, which we should never in animation lost our sort of like that idea. We shouldn't lose it because we need to create something realistic, but it's just like a trick. It's basically like an animation trick. One drawing after the other creates an illusion. And in animation we should do that. Like for example, for The Witness, we had a very difficult scene, which is the girl wearing the jacket. And when I showed to the guys that they were doing the clothes, they were like, this has never been done before, it's impossible. Like a character cannot actually put a jacket at the time. And it still is very difficult because you are asking the computer to get a volume that it cannot be a hand, because if it's a hand, then it gets through the vertex and then it breaks the computer and it gets crazy. So that you need to figure how do you put something that goes through a sleeve. And we try and we try and we try, and we never did it. But people think that we did. Sorry, I shouldn't say, but I actually mixed two scenes and then a little bit of blur, and then we create two simulations. And it was like a milestone that actually was never successful. But it was, that's the illusion, that's the trick, that's what you can do with animation. And Jibaro is full of that as well. Like a lot of things that they were like impossible to do, a lot of things that they are like very like opera tricks in a way, things that if you put the camera a little bit more into the right, more into the left, all of a sudden the whole illusion and the whole trick disappeared. But it was a really, really sophisticated experience.
But were you looking for this kind of challenging experience? I mean, you set up your kind of your own trouble, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, but because of challenge with yourself, or it's something that you hadn't planned, or how did it go?
No, I mean, no. It seems like it's like that. It seems like a challenge, but it's just like the story required that. But it's just like medieval characters in a forest in a lake. Wow. So it's just like exactly challenge.
So on one side, what is curious, I mean, it's on one side this kind of extreme complexity and technological challenges. On the other side, there is kind of a kind of handcraft, very basic elements. We were evoking kind of a few hours ago the sound of Jibaro. Can you share how did you kind of did the sound of the film?
Yeah, a lot of the sound of the film, I love sound design, it's super fun, and you know, nowadays with your iPhone, I was telling you, I do a lot with my iPhone. and iPhone has a really cool microphone, and I remember for Jibaro I was like, okay, let's, how do we do the armor? So everything is basically like kitchen apparel. So it's just getting knives and casseroles and then recording, and then it was during COVID time, so I couldn't do much. I was in my place and I was just recording all this kitchen apparel or the underwater. It was I got my iPhone. It seems like an Apple commercial. I got my phone. I got my phone inside of a Ziploc, one of these, and then I put it in one of these buckets with wheels, and then I was just moving it and recording or getting my face like, and the sounds they're amazing because it's underwater and it sounds like on the wheels they are like. So that was a great experience, and then you put that in the film and then you mix it and then you make it, with the step you have like casseroles like crush, 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 and it's so fun. It's so much fun. All of a sudden the thing becomes alive. And then of course all this kind of like a whole sausage of sound, you give it to a technician that need to convert it into 5.1 or whatever and distribute it in the room, and then it sounds like really, really cool. And I usually, my sounds are extremely loud. Every time that I get it to a technician, they're like, are you crazy? This is like you went too below everything. Like my Premiere is always on red. Like the sound bar is always like borderline dead. Like you hear it the way that I hear it.
It's time to open the mic to the audience. So if you have a question, raise your hand. There is a mic there. There are a few. So cool. Let's start from there. Yeah. You decide the priority.
Hi, I want to ask about the cinematography. There are a lot of decisions, like aesthetical decisions, that you constantly repeat over all your short films, like the shaking camera, also like the ring light. It's super interesting to use it as a way to show to the audience that the camera is present. No, mm-hmm. Also the spots of blood, for example, in the screen. So can you maybe explain a little bit your these aesthetical decisions that seems more near to the social media, near to these ring light elements, and also why is always like kind of the same aesthetic in all your short films?
Good question. I don't know. I think the answer is that it's not in order to have a signature. It's just like I use my ingredients and maybe I do a shot and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this again, see, oh, it's better. So kind of like I add my things. There are some compositions that I like, especially. I really like the camera to be present. I don't know. I don't have really a reason why, but I don't do it. I don't do it for a technical reason, or it's not that I don't want the audience to feel more there. It's just like I like the camera there. Even sometimes I had an idea of, even if you make an animation film and then somebody's looking in the mirror, it would be nice to have that weird mistake of seeing the people reflected in the mirror. Or maybe in an animation film I could put some time microphone coming in and out, just for the sake of fun and realism. But funny that you say all these elements, they travel. It's funny because the bird film, the gentrification film, it has one bird that is multiplied multiple times, and then you see that bird in all the films. You see it like in the Windshield Wiper, you see it in The Witness, you see it in Jibaro many times flying. It's always the same file. Like I animated this fucking bird once, and you're gonna keep seeing that bird, by the way.
Another question there.
Hello. Well, first of all, well done. It's just amazing what we saw. I'm going to ask a question which goes to the opposite. I noticed that on your website that you do also painting. And since I'm curious, because I'm starting to, what's your relationship with painting when actually you have to decide to do one frame rather than a long one? And is there any relationship between your digital and painting, or there is not at all?
It is a huge relationship. I mean, the way that I paint digitally is the same that I paint oils. The only difference is that, and the best advantage is that digital doesn't smell, you don't need to clean your tools after, and in digital you can undo, which is great. Because in oil paintings you fucked it up and you fucked it up, and it's just like, oh man. So that's great. Digital allows you to improve a lot. Digital allows you to be brave and to try new things. But the technique and how I use it is exactly the same. The same as if I use oils, the same as I use wash or watercolor. The relationship there really is there. You say something very interesting, which is like you have to choose just one frame and which one is, because in animation it's like a lot of moving frames. I usually choose the image, or because usually I paint based on a photograph that I take, or if it's a video, I choose the frame that I like. Back in the time, I was painting live, tedious process. But the answer is I choose the frame that I really like, the frame that I see that it will be better in a wall, and the one that works for me visually. That's very much it.
Another question. There are a few here, so we can calm down afterwards.
Hi, I was just wondering what the name Jibaro means, if it's one of the names of the characters or where it comes from.
Good. Jibaro has different meanings in South America and Central America, apparently. I don't know where it is, it means drug dealer. And in Cuba, for example, it means peasant, or people that work in agriculture. But when I chose the name Jibaro, I didn't know the meaning of any of these regions. I didn't know what it was. I just knew the word, but I didn't have a clue how to connect it to the film. I just liked it, and I thought that Jibaro was him, but I like that people don't really know if Jibaro is him or if he's like some sort of like energy perhaps that is in the forest, which is quite obvious that forest has some sort of like a strange energy protecting this woman. So maybe that's what it is. Sometimes I do things without knowing why, and then later the meaning comes. And that doesn't mean that it was not on purpose, it means that subconsciously it was probably hidden. I like to take it that way. So it's something that's still waiting for. Let's see if I get the answer.
Another question there.
Hi, my name is Lorenzo, and first of all, Alberto, thank you so much for today. It was amazing. I'm a big fan of your works, not just from a skill set standpoint, your animation, your backgrounds, but also for your creative vision. I find your works to be very daring and fresh and creative, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
And my question is about becoming an art director, because right now I'm working here in Milan as a background artist. And given that the world today is changing so much, what would you do differently if you had to start all over again today? So probably my question is how to become you today, but what would you do if you had stories to tell, right? So
Yeah.
if you have your personal vision and flares and stuff to tell, what would you do?
So let me ask you, wait a second. You asked me if I am not an art director yet, and I want to get to the point where I am, what I will do, or if I want to give an advice to somebody that wants to become an art director.
Yes, that's it. Someone who wants to become an art director is starting out right now. I'm 24 years old and working in studio. So
I see.
If you could light up the path. Thank you.
I prefer to answer the first question, but I'm going to answer the second.
You choose.
No, I'm kidding. The first question, the second question is interesting. I don't know, a lot of people sometimes ask me, like, in the same situation, like, I want to be an art director. This is something that I told before. Sometimes you are in a studio and there's like a lack of direction, and in this case, that was my case. I remember I was a background artist, and then a producer came. She had like some sort of like urgency. She needed to know something, and like, who is the art director? And all of us, we were just looking at each other, and I was like, me? I'm the art director. And that's actually how I became an art director. Believing it and saying it to people, you know. So like, I'm an art director. So if you want to change your role, you need to start saying it first. Even if it's with your friends in a bar, or if it's with somebody in the industry, even if you never did it. Because then somebody might hire you, and then you have to, oh shit, I'm an art director. I think that that's something that I was doing for a while. I remember when I didn't direct anything, I was saying I am an animation director, and people start believing it. So that's something very important, because we victimize ourselves a lot. We are like in these positions, and then it's like, fuck, I'm just doing this, but they don't give me that. And if you believe that you can do it, you need to start, being a little bit more aggressive. I think that's the thing. I mean, not stepping on people, but a little bit more aggressive on what you want to do.
Assertive.
Assertive. Okay.
Thank you.
So here.
Hi. It's more than a question. It's more an opinion that I want to ask to you. Like, I see in your work a lot of reference from live action, of course. So I think in the past, or the typical use of live action is more like with the rotoscoping animation, that is not actually so cool. Mm-hmm. But you kind of give this to another level, like the live action, the cinematography, or whatever is super there. Do you think there is space for the opposite, just to bring like animation to live action, but like we are used to like have the fake like cartoon character with like live character, but just bring this to another level? There is space for this for you, not in the industry, but in general, like to develop this.
You mean to do the opposite?
Yeah, to bring like animation to live action. It's like the opposite.
Oh, so like something a little bit more cartoony and flat, perhaps, into live action?
Yeah, it's like 2D animation, but not necessarily like cartoon style, but like the kind of like, you do the paintings, you do a lot of art there, but to bring this to the live action like it's now.
Well, I think that, and we have the cafeteria here with Wes Anderson. Maybe Wes Anderson is a good example of that. I think like perhaps his movies are almost animated, and the compositions, everything is very flat, very cartoony. Characters right in front of like a super flat background. Maybe that's a good example. And of course there is room for that. If we are open to see people where we are throwing pianos on top of them, or like Tom and Jerry, that would be very nice to see in live action, even though it might be gory. But I really would like to see something like that. But maybe Wes Anderson is a really good example, I would say, and maybe some others as well out there. Maybe who as well, the director for Amélie, and right? I think that Amélie.
Yes. Jeanne Caro.
Okay, exactly. I think that the City of Lost Children as well. Don't you think that that's also very sort of like based on animation and cartoon? I would say, yeah, the timing especially, right?
Behind you.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And actually, I even have like the first Spider-Verse book with me. I came with it. And I'm a final year animation student here in an art academy. And my question was, what are like some advices you would give to students who wish to break into the industry and who eventually want to direct their own stories, and what are the anti-advices that like you would mention as in like things to avoid?
I mean, as I say to him, which is almost like let's continue with what I was saying. I will say that more important thing is that you try to do things on your own and you don't wait for people to finance your stuff. Because right now you have a computer at home and you can do it. I think that in terms of drawing and in terms of learning skills and art, it's very difficult to learn if you just want to train. Like if you just say like, okay, today I'm going to draw hands. For a week I'm going to draw hands in all the positions. It's like boring. But if you have a project or you have an idea, you have a short film, then you are forced to draw hands in many positions. And you are learning, you are practicing, but at the same time you are basically improving your skill. And that's been always my motif, like not on purpose, but I just realized that I was training by accident. I never went to school, I never had the academic sort of like boring practicing, which can be very tedious, but I always had the fun of being involved in a project, and the next day I have no clue what I have to do or how I have to do it, so I need to check, especially nowadays. You have your computer, you have your equipment, you have like thousands of YouTube tutorials. Like I am looking into tutorials to do Jibaro. Like it's like After Effects, how the fuck you get this window? Like, and then you have the most annoying tutorials sometimes, like hello guys, and go to the fucking point. And then you have people that they are doing tutorials that they are like, you know, like you bless them, almost like, shall I write a comment like thank God? That they're like short and concise. But there's no excuse. Like you have to do the thing by yourself because you have the equipment. Like we are living in a world of the new renaissance in a way because we have access to all this beautiful technology. And before you needed heavy equipment, you needed to, you know how they were shooting animation movies before, like massive cameras, multi-layer stuff, like you needed like hundreds and hundreds of people. Like for gentrification, it was just by myself. Like there is no excuses. Like
I will pass the mic on to the next person now, but before that, is it working?
no.
Okay, it's working. But like, especially like the ongoing layoffs in the animation industry, like even to the most, like these are happening to the even the most experienced like art directors, vis dev artists, like so many esteemed professionals. I think it's even harder for like freshers like me who have minimal to zero experience, like to break into the industry. What are your thoughts in this? Like to what are like some things that we could do to shine a bit more and survive in this difficult, trying times, let's say?
Well, I have to say that you are not living a difficult time in the animation industry. I have to say you are living right now is basically the golden times. Like for me, it's even hard to hire people because there is a lot of them, they have jobs. While before, I came out with an idea like The Witness, and a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to be on board 100%. And I was like, I'm doing this video game thing, or I'm doing this thing for this movie. So there's a lot of animation jobs out there. It is true there is a lot of layoffs, and it is true that there is more professionals now than before because now there is schools. It's basically you need to be passionate about what you do. And the most important thing is not to get far. The important thing is to enjoy what you're doing every day as much as possible.
Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, there is another screening starting in a few minutes. We need to leave the room, but thank you very much for being with us, and thank you, Alberto.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Alberto Mielgo, ma lei come sarebbe il problema di layoff